Oh, it is working. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Crystal. I am a community outreach specialist with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, and I use she, they pronouns. It is an absolute honor to introduce our presenters with ParivarBayArea. So, Anjali Rimi, who uses she, they pronouns, is a pioneering Indian Kinnar transgender leader, immigrant rights advocate, and a civil servant with the city of San Francisco. She is president and founder of ParivarBayArea and has led groundbreaking trans entrepreneurship programs and leadership programs across California and globally. Honored by U.S. Congress as Woman of the Year in 2023, Anjali continues to champion LGBTQIA plus immigrant justice, equity, and leadership development globally. In this workshop session, we're going to explore how mutual aid and volunteerism fuel queer and trans liberation, showing how together we can build community power, strengthen grassroots movements, and rise collectively towards a more just and caring world, which we absolutely need right now. And presenting with Anjali is Pawnee, and she uses she, her pronouns. So I will go along and pass it off to you to share in your wisdom and experience.
Thank you. I'm going to stand. I hope you all can hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Can somebody pass me the clicker because I forgot it over there?
I got it.
Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum, and thank you so much for being here. Welcome to our very humble conversation that we are going to have. I will issue an activation warning that some of the things that we share may be less activating, but we want to make sure that we are striving to create a safe space here. I'm Anjali Rimi. Thank you so much, Crystal, for that beautiful introduction. And we are here. We're grateful for the summit. And I'm joined by the one and only fabulous Pawnee, who's with ParivarBayArea as well. Our presentation is much more than just slides. I want you all to raise your hand, vehemently oppose anything you see on there, and have a conversation with us. We don't have a breakout session here because it'll be tough to do in this setup, but we do want you to feel free to engage with us and make it as interactive as possible.
And because we are recording and we want to make sure that we are able to capture what the questions and comments from the participants are, please just raise your hand and I will run the mic to you. We want to make sure that we're able to capture as much of this fabulous presentation as possible for our website.
And if you don't want to be photographed or recorded when you ask your question, please also let us know. We want to make sure we respect your privacy. All right, with that, we are ParivarBayArea. Who are we? We're going to start the presentation by telling you a little bit about who we are because it provides a context to why we're talking about transgender intersectional unity. All those words go together. Maybe there's spacing in between them. But we are America's only and first Hijra Kinnar centering Global South transgender immigrant and asylee empowering organization uplifting Indian South Asian heritage and culture. And we have been around for about 6 years. Personally, my advocacy has been around since I was born, as with each one of us. And, hailing from India, coming here and, seeing the need, we created this organization, and it is to be understood in part of this presentation is riveting, is that we are still the only organization that is forefronting and putting trans leadership in this diaspora, in this intersectionality of immigrant folks in the entire United States of America, 6 years later. We also have a few photos there. We have our newly revamped website because our website and our email and the entirety of it got hacked in June, and we lost access to most things we had for 6 years. which also, is why we are not going to stand back. We're going to rise up, as the summit is. Who are our communities? All of you and everyone is our community. We are in this space. But uniquely, the ones that we serve are the culturally diverse transgender Hijra, Kinnar, Tirunangai, and often I'm asked, where are they? Yes?
Kinnar, is that a synonym for Hijra, or what's...
Beautiful question. Kinnar is the, the diaspora gender expansiveness. So if you think of the gender umbrella that anyone's shown you of the trans being expansive, the identities in the South Asian spaces are more connected to an element of culture, heritage, religion, region, language, and such. So Kinnar is ones that are particularly more Indic to the land of India and South Asia that were considered to be part of divinity. In Hindu mythology, there's 14 gods or characters that are considered and revered even today as divinity. So Kinnars are considered to be apsaras, or literally translating as angels. And as the Hijras came in with the commingling and the amalgamation in those cultures from many hundreds of years ago, the Hijra community is synonymously what we consider on the Western world as trans. So Kinnar is under that, but we all exist past religions, genders, and all that, because at the end of the day for us it's about finding chosen families, which are very big. There's 18 to 19 terms for folks that is very varied. From Tirunangai is primarily from one particular part of India, but they're also considered to be artists, dancers, and considered to be, courting the temples. There's Mangalmukhi, there is Jogti, there is Nupibinya, and the list goes on and Kwajasara, if you've heard that term. This is our community that is primarily undocumented, differently documented, and monolingual. Often I'm asked the question, where are the others? I can tell you that they have blended further into the diaspora because most of them don't really get the term trans or the community in the Western culture, because the way they have been, assimilating for a long time has been, on the lines of, either an art, which is dance, or has been on the lines of a culture or a profession. A lot of them you'll find, if they're ever comfortable, to come out. So we do meet, we do connect. And then other community we have are those that are, mid-level employment to limited economic privilege, all the way to those that have educated themselves well, come from the urban parts of South Asia, and they're mostly immigrant and second generation, but also identifying the queer non-binary. The third is the overlapping communities of global South transgender immigrants and asylees. This includes everybody with whom we share a related culture or a complementary culture, but at the same time, all of us are coming from countries and continents below the equator and have the same struggles when we come to the United States of America. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's my turn. So a little bit biography about me. My name is Pani. I am helping Anjali and Parivar doing strategy. Before that, I turned nonprofits into better structured areas. For the last year and a half, I have been working as the Chief Human Resource Officer for a tech company. And for fiscal sponsorship, we have under TransCan work. They are sorry, my mic just went down behind my skirt. I'm back to casting. But TransCan Work is a nationwide nonprofit. It is a nonprofit that deals with employment opportunities for the trans community and non-binary communities all over the state and all over the country. Under the tutelage of Tony Newman, TransCan Work is all over the country and doing great wonders for trans folk, and they have graciously been our fiscal sponsor since January of this year now, correct? Yes, since January of this year. And with their work and their support, we are hoping to expand Parivar to all over the state, and we hope to see you all, if you can, volunteer with us. Or, people who can donate to Parivar. Thank you.
She spoke just like our strategist. But there's an undercurrent in why we brought this slide up. Parivar has not ever become a 501c3. Folks have asked us why. Because it is about building intersectional unity. It is about understanding, sharing scale, but also learning about communities with one another. We were previously fiscally sponsored by the LGBT Asylum for many years, and now with Transkin work, it's really building those powerful synergies, but also, building education, which we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation. What are some of the programs that we focus on? We focus on Global South Transgender Services. Primarily that began with advocacy through arts. So we had artists from our South Asian diaspora, but also grandly from the trans artists that most of you must have seen. We've done over 600 plus community event spaces, a few definitely in Santa Clara, but now we've been doing them across the state. Our Immigrant Leadership Development Program started as the Transgender Emerging Leadership Program, and that was with 10 spots, and now we've taken that statewide. We have over 600 applications, but we only have 80 spots. It's important to recognize that, we went from, as most trans-led and trans-centering and trans hearts do, we open up the whole house and whole thing. So our program went from being exclusive to trans folks to now being open to LGBTQIA immigrants and asylees across the state. What is important about that is over 11% of folks from our spring cohorts this year, that's about 40 of them, have found employment or civic engagement. We've had over 600 people graduate over the last 8 cohorts since 2022, and 2026 applications are already 30% in. And social engagements and resettlements, we believe in creating trans joy. Building that is so critical, and magnifying that is even more important given our struggles and traumas. But I really want to bring your attention to the transgender intersectional unity piece, which is something that what some people call us as niche organization continues to struggle even today. And that, of course, is the core of this conversation we're having here. But that is a program for us. That is a vision for us. That is an initiative that we thought would be somehow put, streamlined into any of these programs. But we have continued to see that need always emerges, always continues, and in these times actually is even more amplified and even more critical. And, I want to talk a little bit more about how we're doing that at ParivarBayArea, and then we'll get to the concept of what that really means. This program can be said, we all often get questions like with the direct services like this, do you only serve the South Asian trans Hijra Kinnar community? Well, Parivar wants to really, be explicit and wants to really model that for communities, not just our home communities of trans or immigrant, but to everybody. And really showcase that we have to work together in these times, but in any time we have to build it together. So this is a new program that we have finally formalized. Parivar has helped hundreds of people with translations all the way to sitting in the immigration court. And now we have launched a program that's not just open to trans or LGBTQIA folks, but to everybody, particularly those in California. These are with a partnership with Ocon Law. The idea being that Parivar has beautiful transgender intersectional supports from many legal firms, some within the community led by amazing queer trans leaders, and some in the mainstream of what's called legal services. And so we want to build that network in employment and civil services. We're starting phase 1, and we already have over 100 submissions for this, where, yes, we are going to always center and prioritize transgender folks, but we also need to be careful in this environment on how we word things and we build our programs. So while this program is low bono for most folks with Ocon law and about to be announced, another immigration organizing a group, which is for-profit legal services, but has culturally humble, trans-affirming services, but also 98% approval rates. It's also our very, very, very explicit intention to have transgender folks get stipends from $500 to $1,500 towards their immigration cases. And that is where we really want to build equity for the transgender immigrants, because while we respect and recognize that there are pro bono, low bono programs, particularly for the greater rainbow community, if you look at the stats, and I'm a data person, the trans people, the non-binary people, the people from the global south particularly, who are perhaps very, rooted in their culture or monolingual, they continue to still struggle to get, proper, respectful, affirming, and, accessible immigration services. I already talked about the leadership program. One thing I would highlight for you is we want to build competency that's been core for Parivar. We're not sad stories. Trans people are not tragedies. We are very powerful people. And for that, we always give folks a stipend. We took the stipend up from $500 to $750, and high or low water. What did it say?
Hell or high.
Hell or yeah, that we still make sure. Thank you. We make sure that 90 people are going to get $1,500 this year, to do whatever they want to. As they graduate from this program. This is also a part of our, intersectional unity, which is centering Hijra Kinnar South Asians, but we also have a resettlement and referral services tailored to, let me turn that off, since my husband is missing me too much. Social initiatives such as activating and building collaborations. I was just talking to one of my mentors, Bambi, as we were having lunch, as to how we further the immigrant symposiums that are centering transgender people. We started that in 2022, and we've done them since then, against all odds, and we've done them even in Santa Clara County, thanks to the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. So these are some of the other things we do, but really rooted in our culture and in not losing that, for which we also get an equal amount of criticism for getting what is dubbed as too ethnocentric. But who else is doing this with us is the question. So, wait, am I going back? Wait, I'm supposed to go back. You're seeing all the slides. You're not supposed to see all the slides.
Yeah, we can close our eyes. We're looking down.
Look down, look down. Okay. Well, I think I warmed you up to things, but maybe some of you read the definition. But what do you really think of, I'll pause here and say, what do you really think of transgender intersectional unity? Not looking for a, thesis-based answer or any, there's no right or wrong, but what do you think those three words put together really mean?
For me?
Yeah, for me, okay. So for me, and I happen to be listening to a Angela Davis book right now, so that's kind of it's that all our movements are linked together. Mm-hmm. And so the movements and the progress that's made in one arena influences and affects because of the intersections of our experience, and we're not just one thing. And also past movements, seeing the failure to have black women involved with feminism and other movements. So that's what I think of.
Absolutely.
What I'm reminded of is that one of the shortcomings of identity politics is that you're usually served well if you're one or two steps removed from the white male fill out other norms here. And so I really appreciate that you guys are filling a gap that, a group of people that is further from the norm and therefore really needs help, needs more help, and that you guys are kind of beyond that framework.
Thank you.
Hi, Satrika.
That's
Question, considering kind of what a lot of folks have shared today, and understanding the layers of our existence, how they inform how we experience the world, I'm wondering, how is Parivar handling casteism? How are they handling, because I'm noticing that caste hasn't been included in a lot of the information that I'm seeing right now, and that's something that is so unique to it is a global thing, but it's very unique to Middle Eastern and South Asian MENA communities. And so are there stipends for trans South Asian folks who are caste oppressed? And what are some of Parivar's efforts for combating Hindu fascism that might be on the uprise? Because it is on the uprise in India. What's happening here? Because I think as queer trans South Asian folks, we need to keep in mind that some of our most neglected family members are being treated in horrible ways, where gender absolutely intersects with how they're being treated. And it's just one of the thoughts that I'm noticing coming up as we're talking about unity, because there's going to be pride events that caste oppressed people are excluded from, and that's kind of the antithesis of what we're talking about here. And I know there are efforts, I know we care about our people, but yeah, it was just something that's coming across my mind. And I also wanted to say congrats on your new space. I was seeing that you opened on Diwali, so yeah, congrats.
Thank you so much. I think that's a beautiful segue to answering some of the aspects of our overlapping systems of oppression. In the Western context at least, I think we know the word intersectionality, and in this framework of transgender intersectional unity, it's recognizing that even within the transgender community, folks experience these overlapping systems of oppression differently, and it is so important to express solidarity and mutual support across all marginalized groups. So I'll take your example here. The core fundamental aspect, and I'll speak specific to Kinnars and Hijras, is that we come from a variety of the upper caste, the lower caste, the BCs, the Dalits in India. But the overarching discrimination begins by our gender expression. And within that, there is definitely further trauma that we induce with one another. And we can't deny that. When we are traumatized and we are marginalized individuals, the mindset of lack sets in, but at the same time, what happens is that there's all these oppressions that happen, and oppressor can also be the one that was oppressed at one time. So in terms of addressing caste for us, or sexism, or racism, or classism, or language access, or any of those aspects, it is making sure that we start from the struggle of the transgender identity to begin with, and we continue to make sure that we are also addressing other elements that are going to come at us and attack us and erase us beyond the trans identity. And so building those kinds of educations, the unlearnings, it's also important in our trans community, and in the South Asian community, we definitely see that. At least in the Bay Area, that's something that we are continuing to look through. And once we see people thrive and go beyond, where they are in their immigration struggles and journeys especially, you kind of see them forget all about, the overall communities. And that's nothing wrong. Folks have the right to do what they have to do, but we also need to be advocates in other spaces. And that is truly where the transgender intersectional unity comes into play, and also in announcing many other aspects. But at the core of it is transgender. Because if we don't take care of our own people, we know nobody else will if we don't voice out. And yes, but we are often said to be loud, angry, coming into fight and argue, but that is because equity has never been availed to us. And so transgender intersectional unity is just not always expecting trans people to do the work. It's about centering transgender people in that space, in that framework, whether that's a conversation about, things that are non-trans, but making sure that we are actually there to promote solidarity with one another. Why does it matter to Parivar Bay Area? Because we are trying to, that's me stretching, and the amazing folks, that we try to stretch. Within the South Asian community, I think we have long ways of decolonizing, destigmatizing gender expression and gender identity. And when I say South Asian, some folks synonymously say, oh, it's Indian, but I want to clarify that South Asian is much more than that. The white man was very kind to put us on boats like Kormagati Maro and send us across the world. So it is the diaspora of Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. It's all of us. But even within those diasporas, even in Bay Area, even in the most progressive spaces, trans identities are still kind of thought of. They're uplifted, but you actually don't see them being given the mic, or you don't see them being welcomed. Or if they disagree on certain social aspects of South Asian aspects, then the entire person with their trans identity is thrown. I can give you many examples of myself going from the very privileged, very so-called caste-focused areas and trying to educate them, to a language focus, to a religion focus, to a far more progressive groups going and facing the same kind of tokenism, and we appreciate your language. But it's also how do we define trans in South Asian is something very important, and it's so binary at so many ways that it gets very difficult to be in those spaces, and we have work to do, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to call ourselves the South Asian organization. The Hijra Kinnar, as you see, is separate from the trans, because as I said at the top of this presentation, we only listed two, but if we went listing all of them, like especially those that are in the Adivasi tribe, those that come from the very secluded, like I can give you an example of, my husband's side, he's Dalit, and coming from, what I see in his neighborhood, even though, my gharana, which is the house I belong to, is in remotely the same area of his living, and I'm not trying to give away because, it's all very sensitive. The way the trans people are treated in that area, whether they come over to this side of, where the more populous people are, it's very different, so we have to understand those layers. But I'm going to just take this one level higher and say, I'm asked many times, as my legendary sister Andrea asked here, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Andrea and Gail for being here. They've been my, our heroes in our community forever, and I'm so thrilled they're here, along with Miss Bambi, who was here. But really understanding Hijra Kinnar has been lost. And, I can give you so many examples, right? Not too far from here in San Jose, we have some amazing, brilliant, Hijra people. She recently got married. She had a big wedding. I was the only trans person there, maybe one other person, because we have not done a good job in the Western world to really keep that integrity of that identity together, because that's how they dress, that's how they're present, that's how they exist, that's how they're only good at dancing, and that's what they've come here. And trans also, in the greater context, and now what we are facing in headwinds is a very light word. I think we all know to exist as a trans organization, first, it's very hard to do that even in spaces that we believe are safe, and we walk in and we find out, well, again, you're a T along the alphabet soup and you are a token. We'll give you the mic, but just say a few two words and move on, but you're not going to be the leader making decisions. I don't think I need to define to you all that in these times when organizations like Parivar Bay Area are trying to exist, or the Trans Latina Coalition, and trying to impress upon from elected officials to very large communities or academic institutions. There's questions and asks, can you drop the word trans? Can you just erase that? Well, that's where the intersectional unity goes out the door. I don't know if any of you caught me saying that this started as the Transgender Immigrant Emerging Leadership Program to now being called the Immigrant Leadership Program. Can any of you guess why that happened? You think ParivarBayArea was afraid, or, we tell you that, we want to make sure that it is open to all folks, but we wanted to still keep the name and say it's open to everybody, but we're going to send to trans folks. Because we got specific direction, from some of our biggest supporters saying, you got to, lose that. And it wasn't just us. We're seeing that with most trans organizations happen today. And the last thing is immigrant. I think it's needless to say that, the immigrant communities have a hard time seeing maybe the two bubbles in the middle, but in overall, are we seeing our immigrant communities today as a society? Perhaps we're doing our best in our individual capacity, but what is happening to immigrant folks today is just inhuman. I want to further expand on that and touch on certain aspects of things. Centering trans leadership in a diaspora context is uneasy. In a diasporic API in South Asian spaces, trans voices have historically been sidelined or tokenized. My theory behind that is most of Asia and other spaces got colonized for hundreds of years, and the erasure of the indigenous or the native trans gender expansive identities was lost, and we take those mindsets and we come here, or we build lives here, and we continue to not unlearn. And so that really happens, and shifting the power to gender oppressed, challenging cis heteronormativity, and creating authentic representation, that's very uneasy for folks to do. And we at ParivarBayArea have never shied away from it. We have said if nobody invites us in, we will invite folks in ourselves. We'll feed them and we'll try to have a conversation with them. Intersectionality in the immigrant journey is vast. Navigating immigration status, cultural stigma, transphobia, and colorism to one size fits all for all journeys. So it is no secret that when large immigrant organizations are approached by ParivarBayArea saying, can we have a table at your immigration forum or fair that you're having in this very large school auditorium? Oh, we have that covered. Why in the immigrant community do we have such transphobia that is emerging from a place of survival, perhaps, because we are all trying to exist? But then also this aspect of one size fits all for all journeys, like I'll go back to South Asian. We all come from one part of the South Asian land, and we are all belonging to one caste, and we all speak one language. That needs to be dismantled. But when we have a herd mentality of pushed us to assimilate in the United States of America, we tend to really, see that those majority voices become louder and they erase the intersectionality. That's much more than just, trans identity. So understanding trans journeys within the Global South immigrant communities is critical and life-saving. And this, I want to just add to this that it's not, specific to the South Asian Global South trans folks that we see. We also see this in folks that are from, Latinx and South American communities who are trans and who are trying to exist. So we always have this joke, yes, girl, they don't let me be in their space, so I'm going to come into your space, and we go into that space. And where the unity is lost there.
Oh, my turn? Okay, my turn again. So before I start the last column, can I ask, has anyone read the book American Gods? Or seen the show American Gods? You have, right? Okay, so in American Gods, basically is when the gods lose worship, their stories change and things change. And understanding about how trans folk goes through that. There's a point. So I'm Cambodian. And a long time ago, trans folks were seen as divinities. now we're viewed as sex workers and prostitutes and ladies of the night, giving all the husbands what the wives won't give them. And there goes the misunderstanding of cultural values, because now we're pulled out. And this goes in line with the story of American Gods. When Queen Bilquis was forgotten, she was a powerful queen of giver of life, and now she was deduced to being a succubus throughout the stories. That really aligns with trans identity in many cultures in Southeast Asia. And it's going in line with the column of misunderstanding and bias in the trans community due to cultural invisibility falls under that bracket. Existing as Kinnar Hiraj, immigrant person is seen too cultural, and too cultural can be seen as, well, we have to come out of our comfort zone, we don't like that, because to them it's too foreign for us to accept. And because of that, we need to refocus back to, this is not foreign, this is what you don't understand. And this is how I integrate it with folks in the political spectrum now, regarding folks yelling about fascism. And I always tell them this, you can't tell a trans person or scare them about fascism, because a trans person was born into fascism. The first day we came out, we're in fascism. What you guys are all scared of now is that you're now afraid to live in the conditions you put us in. And that's what scares you. It's not fascism that scares you. You're scared that the system itself will now treat you the same way you treat us. You can't change your name, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's why you need to recenter it back to the misunderstanding of cultural values, understanding these are people who are existed for thousands of years. So we just forgot who they are. And expanding inclusivity amongst trans to be much more than Western white experience is that, seeing them beyond the white scope. Before Cambodia was taken over by first the Portuguese, the Spanish, and then the French, I didn't have a problem existing, my people didn't have a problem existing. And seeing it beyond the white spaces of binary and systems that they put us in, we need to see beyond that and center that to what we are and to be accepted, you know, because tolerating is just tolerating till somebody put you in jail and then let you go. Like, we don't need to tolerate this anymore, as we're seeing now. So being able to accept that and not changing the stories and building on the stories to making sure that you're still visible is recentering back to unity. And I hope that makes sense for everybody.
Yes. I also want to expand that by saying that we don't have unity within the trans community. We have racism, we have classism, and we see that with every November we commemorate Transgender Day of Visibility. And if you did your analysis, if you got the numbers, you can see very well that we don't do enough for our Black trans community. At the same time, we are not pushing as a community together for better access and better employment for folks that are in the trans Latinx community. And so we are all in our own journeys, own struggles and fights, and we don't seem to be able to come together unless there is a privileged voice, which was brought up earlier, and that seeps into the aspect even more when you are a further intersectional identity like the South Asian Kinnar Hijra, which is again further prejudiced even within that community with language, caste, national origin being a huge thing, because then we start ranking and having these secondaries and such, instead of just saying, we're trans, let's all come together and build that intersectional unity. And, that really is what building transgender intersectional unity is. It's survival. I'm not going to deny that. Sometimes it's just that. An example I can give you is like what we did during the pandemic. For the LGBT COVID Relief Coalition in the Bay Area, we definitely had that open to everybody, but we needed to ensure that the trans communities to whom the trans community, their immediate communities came to support, had the most equity in like how we gave out food or gift cards and such. At a global level, we saw the same thing when we were doing work in India and Bangladesh and Guyana. It's not always the size. It's also like what is the desperation. Like in Guyana when we were doing the COVID relief, suddenly there was a storm, the flood, and we had like lost trigger warning. We had lost people, and now we needed to do final rites for them, and they came from different backgrounds, So it was also us figuring out how do we do that remotely, because we don't have anybody on the ground in Guyana. So it's really survival it comes down to. And I can't begin to tell you the stories of our own survival at ParivarBayArea, because we have thought many times that this is it, we're just going to be a pretty organization. And I've always said that it's such a shame if we end up being the first and the last in this intersectional existence. But we're yet to inspire and see organizations in this intersectionality show up in a big way. It's also empowerment. It's coming together and building scale, building capacity that not most of us have by ourselves, and it's going beyond margins. What have been some of ParivarBayArea's efforts? We started the California Coalition of Transgender Immigrants with Ella and LGBT Asylum. This is a slide from 2022. We were championing the need to center transgender immigrants and working to belong and live in California. And some of that coalition work is how the Emerging Leadership Program went statewide, but also, having other organizations join us has been powerful. And, getting guidance from Trans-Latina Coalition, as they also do statewide, coalition building, has been pretty powerful. But what does this mean to take this, the immigrant coalition? It was to really champion for us to have very culturally, intentional, accessible programs for each of these communities. 5 minutes left?
15.
15. Okay. So I'll go a little fast. Oops, I'm pressing the bad buttons. Front buttons. And here's how we actually started ending up with the California LGBT Caucus, who ended up supporting us with some of the statewide immigration services that now we are able to offer to our vulnerable populations, especially in these times that you see with what's happening statewide. So this is the Spanish version. Then we went into a further partnership with the Center for Immigrant Protection. We visioned this to be able to support the immigrant and asylee journeys of trans centering, but LGBTQIA folks primarily from legal services all the way to socioeconomic rehabilitation and resettlement. And it's really been powerful in building that and inspiring other organizations to think about how can they come together if they have that unity. Needless to say, these are the South Asian activations and spaces we've been in. We were the first ones to go out and, against much resistance, create the Queer Trans Diwali. Diwali is a big festival. If you really go back to the roots of Hijras and Kinnars, this is when we go to our big home visits and get, the blessing, give the blessings. You can see our holiday party to being part of, the Transgender Day of Remembrance and Visibility, our Immigrant Symposium. So many, the list goes on, having a survey. This is more of that, film screenings, and that's like our old logo, and starting the QTAPI coalition, which I didn't touch on here, was also very powerful, being part of the QTAPI coalition. And these are, important because it doesn't let us get erased in history and be known. I already touched on this program that is not just open to South Asian, trans, queer folks, but, essentially to all LGBTQI immigrants and asylees of the Global South. And, this is what, you referenced. This was like our opening of the office, which is historic in its own sense, for us to have an office, the first of its kind, thank you, in San Francisco. And we have tremendous amount of work to do, because we still see if someone is trans and has emerged from their struggle, and yet to thrive, there's another aspect of their identity that comes in the way of their struggle, whether that's their immigration status or that their language barrier, or sometimes in the diaspora aspects that are very stupid, like, oh, what kind of food do you eat? Are you vegetarian or do you eat meat? that those kinds of things get profiled. I can't speak to other diasporas, but I'll say our diaspora asking those questions means you're profiling someone, you ask the question, then you say, which caste are you? Like, without asking that, you're asking the last name and such. Those are still triggering to anybody, but to a trans person who's already endured that, whether they got that support, like me getting support from my mom is different from me getting support from my dad. And I come to my own conclusion because my dad came from a different caste, different region of the country, and my mom came from a different caste, different region. So it's like you come up with these other triggers and traumas that when you get profiled, and I'm sure those exist in other diasporas, but in the South Asian diaspora, it becomes really hard for us. One real salient differentiation I want to do in the South Asian community is the working class Hijra Kinnar folks who rarely blend in with the mainstream, as I call transgender Western existences. And until we merge together and recognize that for that day, that Hijra Kinnar person has to go out, what is called begging, but actually giving blessings on a train or something, and they get the money in, they can think about all these other aspects that are more readily given to somebody who comes from like a nuclear family like mine. You know, I straddle both those lives, you know, coming from a lower middle class family and also existing in the Hijra Kinnar community. But you would not see someone like a Hijra Kinnar doing a presentation, you know, and it's evolving, it's changing, you know, in the system in India especially. But there's other aspects of the diaspora that we still have to journey and straddle, what do they call it? Code switch and do whatnot. Like, I'll never say my last name after my marriage now because I know that will invite right away, you know, from some of my closest friends, they were like, so you all should, like, I mean, I'm trying to make you all, like, I don't know if I'm trying to, like, get you to get the sense of how deep those prejudices are. And I don't know if you can relate and say, oh yeah, that happens in art too, but ultimately, we all, you know, are subservient in this country, which we need to break down to the white landowning Christian male who is considered to be the one that has, you know, the privilege and nobody else. These are other things that we have done to build, you know, our intersectional unity. We created the Transgender Immigrants Day, but that's to celebrate, not just to like say you need services and such, but to celebrate. And do you want to talk to this?
For our Transkin work, fiscal sponsor, or the holiday party?
Yeah, whichever, whatever you want to do.
So again, we are fiscal sponsor for Transkin Work, a national transgender nonprofit for employment services. They do post up daily jobs, and it's all over the state. Please do visit their website. They're all over LinkedIn as well. And we do have a holiday party. Is it the 21st or 20th?
We'll say 21st.
So it's on December 21st. It's on a Sunday. It's our IELP is our leadership cohort presentation and graduation, and they have worked really, really hard for the projects, and they will be presenting that day. And it's from 3 p.m. maybe until 4 or 5 hours later, and it's a celebration as well. So please do save the date. Food and drinks are provided, and there's performances. And yeah, come out for the holidays. And it's on Kirk and Franklin. It's not that far from from Gary Street, and it's centralized for public transportation as well.
Civic Center Bar.
And, yeah, Civic Center Bar, and it's during the holidays, and the holidays in San Francisco is very fun and pretty, and be aware of that as well. So,
thank you. This is our Immigrant Symposium coming up on November 18th. These are our Spanish cohort graduates of the fall session. Our Spanish cohort is run by Victoria Castro, who's been a long-term Parivar leader. Again, intersectional unity. Parivar, Victoria Castro, does it make sense? But that's how we've always rolled, you know. It's centering trans people at the core of it. And she's based in San Diego. And that's how we build coalitions across the state against the wish of many people who say, you just do your regions. This is another part that I can't even begin to talk about given the time frame here, but it was 44 transgender people who reached out to Anjali Rimi and said, we come from different classes, different castes, different regions, different languages. We want to do the disaster relief for our communities because each of them had like 15 to 1,500 to 2,000 communities that they led. They were the Nayaks, the Gurus, the Chelas. So we launched and ran the largest transgender relief coalition history has ever seen, and hope we never have to see it. We lost 3 of those 44 Seetal COVID warriors, one of whom we couldn't even reach because she was in the northeastern part of India that's far removed. And did we face a lot of discrimination because we were tagged the super spreaders? Absolutely. But did other aspects of, as I mentioned earlier, the class navigation happen, access happen? Absolutely. Did we save lives? Yes, over 96,000 people who are all Hijra Kinnar, working class folks who otherwise would be begging on the trains, doing dances, or what's called chella and badai, with a whole lot of things. One snippet I'll share here is that I remember the very first thing I had to buy off the market was an oxygen cylinder for 78,000 rupees in Indian rupees, so just figure that out. This expanded to Guyana, this expanded to Bangladesh, which we didn't plan, but it happened because people on the ground there reached out and we made it happen. This is then continuing to help them rebuild their lives. Now we have 26 businesses that have erased the trans identity because, customers don't like to come, or they prejudice them, or they don't get bank loans to renovate. So these are no longer something we show in our work, but we are showing in this presentation. But most of these businesses have been, grandpersoned, I should say, and they're doing very well on their own. These are some of our partners, but I really want to get to this slide before we run out of time and any questions. What did we learn as ParivarBayArea? We learned that transgender unity must be intersectional, or it isn't unity at all. We all come from different walks of life, and we have to understand what it is to have that unity as trans people first and foremost. All other issues aside, not totally discounted, but we got to build our unity there. Representation without power isn't liberation. If we are not centering transgender leadership, trans voices, a program that is not explicitly saying this is the quota from trans people, there is no representation. It's just tokenism. Cultural context is not a barrier, it's a bridge. Instead of asking ourselves why are we wearing a sombrero or why am I wearing a sari in a formal event, I think we need to ask ourselves, what do I need to learn amongst my trans siblings, and we can build solidarity. Solidarity must flow both ways. It really needs to be not only the fact that we are very scarce resources, but also the fact that we share what we have and we show up for each other. Global and local belonging in the same story. We are all here in this moment. We are facing unprecedented trans erasure. We are in that local movement, but we also have to recognize that we all come from different global mindsets, and those struggles and those journeys are relatable to most to what's happening today, but also could be a whole other aspect that one has to journey and get through. So what are our core learnings? We have learned that it is a lived experience that's not going to go away, that we honor cultural roots and build solidarity across identities. Identities means much more than the trans community, because a lot more privileged communities have the scale and the resources. But it also has to line up with ideology and what it means to be doing true social justice and being right in values, centering healing and connecting local and global struggles, all under the guidance of trans leadership. That is non-negotiable should be for anybody, but definitely for ParivarBayArea and trans orgs, and then to truly reflect the diversity of South Asian Global South. Immigrant and transgender diasporas, those all could be in one place or they all exist separately. So with that, this is our contact, there's our website. Happy to answer any questions, hope that was helpful. I don't know what happened there, but I guess the present PowerPoint just went out. Fonny, do you want to add anything?
I just want to add that for transgender intersectional unity, and then just speaking to those who have a cisgender heteronormative partner, they have to be included in that as well. My husband God bless his soul, he's still alive and everything, but he's white, very rich, I guess, but he's very oblivious to the trans world outside of my bubble. And it does involve your partners to be inclusive in that. And for him, and the story that I can say is that we've been together for 10 years now, and as we progress, he has seen firsthand the discrimination that happens in front of us. First he didn't see it, now he sees it in restaurants and everything. He's like, I can see that these folks really don't like you. They love me because I'm paying for it. I'm cisgender, heteronormative, but also transgender intersectionality work is they have to put their part in it as well. And it's not just you, it's them, especially when you are trying to build a life together. And I just wanted to add that as well as making sure that your partner, especially if they're cisgender, heteronormative, to understand that they too are part of this world, even as much as they are able to live their life as best as they can.
Thank you. Right.
And for the contact info, just go to the Office of LGBTQ Affairs website if you weren't able to capture that. Hopefully, we will make sure to include it in the follow-up materials. And if it isn't already in the intro bio stuff as well. So we are at time. However, I do want to also make sure that there is a little bit of time for any questions. So if you could please raise your hand and I'll run the mic to you.
Do you have any English language media recommendations for someone who is working in gender-affirming interfaith spiritual care?
Let me make sure I understand the question. English language.
Resource?
So, context, my mother is a gender-affirming interfaith chaplain, so she works with people from a lot of cultures, languages, etc., specifically in spirituality, specifically in healthcare. I would like to give her resources because it sounds like it's really important this could be further education for her too, and I'd love it if there was something she could read, basically.
I can speak to the San Francisco context of the Interfaith Council that does do a lot of work in gender-affirming conversations, specific to GLIDE, and Unity Church. There are some, I don't want to say formalized groups beyond the Interfaith Council that do uplift and have speakers, but also have these kinds of conversations. Hopefully that makes sense.
I was wondering, what is your favorite part of your work?
Oh, good question. My favorite part is to see people thrive. See them doing even better than me. I'm not going to go into detail of my own journey, but I came to San Francisco in 2003 because somebody told me in a Yahoo groups when I was in Idaho doing drag shows, I want a rim job at a penitentiary every Saturday. Go there, you'll find your people, South Asian trans folks. 2 years later, I was homeless and stateless, to where our office is actually literally 2 blocks from there. And I don't want anybody to go through that. I had 2 undergrads and dean's list with MBA, and I was homeless and stateless. And I left the country. For 10 years, I was not in this country because I didn't want to get arrested, or at least the square that was put. Truly, that's what makes me happy, I always say my sister, who was smuggled into this country against her will by her then husband, is a commercial truck driver. And I know people have a lot of judgment about commercial truck drivers because they're mostly South Asian, but not all of us are that way. And she persevered. She's still picking up English, but she said, I'm going to become a commercial truck driver. And she's, across the country doing her thing. That's what makes me happy. But I also I would say that's the biggest joy. Trans joy being beyond the struggle that I have seen them go through. Thank you.
Okay, I think we might have time for one more question. If anybody, yes.
Hi, I'm Hillary Shihar pronouns, and I'm a pediatric and adolescent gender care specialist. So I recognize that I work within a privileged community already. The teens and pediatric population that I work with have access to good medical care. And I am constantly looking at minority stress amongst the populations that I work with too. But I am oftentimes fighting a system that is not always gender affirming. And so and I recognize too that I have my own privilege, right, in terms of, the color of my skin and education and things like that. But I guess I'm asking if you have any recommendations in terms of how to go about better tackling or working with a large system that doesn't necessarily, even though saying that they're gender affirming, recognize the need for certain changes within the structure of the larger organization, and not having a team of people that also support it. So I feel like sometimes it's very frustrating on my end. And if there's other things that I could be doing to, even though I'm not part of the queer community, but a fierce ally to help also look at for those, the people that I work with and that beyond the, I guess the direct care. I mean, I do a lot of volunteer work and stuff, but I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but like if you have any suggestions around that.
I think it comes down to humanity. Systems are hard to change, but it can be interpersonal to begin with. So I'm not sure if you directly deal with, you're talking about younger souls and their parents involved. I think the first step of getting them safety is helping the parents understand.
Well, that part I'm doing. It's more of the system of the hospital in itself that I work for, of like medical records, right? Not being misgendered, dead named throughout it because they have it's just an ongoing and persistent thing, and not knowing how to tackle that and not feel, I guess, just bucking a system that doesn't want to change.
Yeah, easiest thing is to say, oh, everything is off these days, so you can't really push for compliance and be like, you're doing discrimination, right? But the other way is, it is discrimination, because no longer, you can use the word compliance and say, you have to follow this is the law, because everything being thrown out the window, right? But then you can build commitment. You can have allies who have decision-making power, and there's power sharing happening. Perhaps there's somebody within the ones in the higher ranks that can make decisions that can help. But it is a change. Institutional, system change is much harder than interpersonal.
All right, let's give some love to Anjali and Pani. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
We're around if you have any questions or suggestions, but ParivarBayArea.net is our website, and it's also in the contacts, so you can get it from there. And come out to our spaces and celebrate with us. Trans joy is here to stay.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for the minute. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
That was really great. I really appreciated it.
Sure.
So cute.
Like just so I can give you the very brief history was when slavery ended here in the U.S., they introduced a bunch of literacy tests.
Okay.
But of course, white people were also being affected by literacy tests because there were a bunch of dumb white people as well, right? Who didn't know how to read. Well, what they did is they put these grandfather laws and it said if your grandfather was able to vote, you were able to vote. And so if you were a slave, your grandfather wasn't able to vote. And if you were newly emancipated, right? So I just wanted to
Thank you, that's super helpful.
Yeah, because I heard you say that. I heard you try to bring it inclusive, but I feel like if you really want to do it, maybe
there was some
Good to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for
You're
everything. By
welcome.
the way, it
Thank
was
you.
really interesting. I just wanted thank you. Yeah, have a good one.
Hi. Yeah, I guess I don't really have a question. I just want to thank you for the very important work that you're doing, and I'm like really touched by it. Thank you so much.
You're
It's
welcome.
very
Thank you.
educational too.
Thank you for being here.
How do you connect with the Q4? Because
Thank you so much for sharing.
basic cultural codes. It's a good point. Have previously, but LGBTQ corners with Behavioral Health Services Department, like they're the ones that like help navigate. They're within the health and hospital system.
Okay, cool. I'll let you know.
Soon, so if we don't see you before we,
All right.